Welcome back, you guys. In today's video, I've got on a very special guest in Joe Tweedy, and today we're going to discuss all things Erling Haaland. Now, of course, you know the reports. It seems like this summer, the club are ready to spend big to sign Erling Haaland. So I hope you guys enjoy. Of course, make sure to comment below. How do you feel about this player? Do you think he's the right signing to make right now? And without wasting any more time, let's introduce my guest in Joe Tweedy. Hey man, how you doing?
Yeah, really good, mate. Yeah, looking forward to chatting about the Norwegian cyborg who is Erling Haaland.
Yeah, I think I prefer your description of him. I saw a terrible one of him yesterday. There's this anime called the Seven Deadly Sins, and I saw one reporter compare him to this character called Escanine, and it was just the most worst description I've ever seen. So
they've had it in their bag for a while, and they've been dying to use the analogy.
Yeah, you know how it goes. But I think today we're going to discuss 4 topics surrounding Haaland. To start with the first one, do you think he's become our number 1 target for this summer?
Yeah, I mean, without sort of getting into the specifics, I think that when you're looking at ways to sort of complete this Chelsea squad, and certainly probably the way the board have been moving a little bit, looking at last season in terms of trying to buy really high potential young players, I think he is the ideal fit. And I think when you look at certainly the really successful Chelsea sides of the past, and I'm someone who kind of believes a little bit in certain play styles and how necessary Chelsea kind of work in a successful manner, but he does kind of give you those sort of Drogba vibes, those kind of Costa vibes, big reference point centre forward, guy who can lead the line, ticks all of kind of the boxes that you would potentially want. And I think in terms of, again, the fact that Chelsea probably still have the capability of spending even during these pandemic times. We've seen a lot of clubs massively hit financially, looking at Barcelona in particular, and another really sort of significant clubs massively hit with the pandemic. We're still in a pretty decent position. So if the idea is that Chelsea want to try and steal a march on people who potentially could buy him not this summer but the following summer, present an interesting project to him and to Mino Raiola, etc. I think that the kind of the fit makes sense. I think from a Chelsea perspective that he players that can come in and potentially instantly improve the quality of the team as a centre forward. There aren't too many names that massively jump out, and the fact that Haaland is young, he has, I think, certainly the frame and the profile of player that probably works in the Premier League. I think there are too many kind of ticks in the boxes from a Chelsea perspective for them to not be interested in him this summer. So I would be very, very surprised if he isn't the number 1 target for us. And also I think in terms of likelihood as well, we probably have as good a chance as any other club in terms of potentially buying him this summer, both in terms of him coming in and the style of the Premier League, all of the kind of things that potentially he would look for in the next club, in the next project. I think he has that at Chelsea, so you could see potentially this is a match made in heaven.
Ooh, so you're feeling pretty optimistic that there is potential, there's legs behind this.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I mean, I think just for me, if you try and sort of take away some of the craziness that surrounds transfer rumours and just try and sort of put it together a bit more logically, we are one of probably a handful of clubs who can afford him in terms of trying to make an early move. Dortmund, I think, certainly need the money. You can see that they publicly massively dropped the Jadon Sancho price tag from 120, 140 more, what it was, to 80. So they're obviously in need of a cash injection. In terms of the profile of striker that Chelsea have had a lot of success with, he kind of fits into that mould. I think Haaland probably, has alluded to the fact that he likes the Premier League previously. So there's quite a few hints or things that line up in terms of potentially us being in a good position to land him. Obviously, both you and I know the transfer market can move drastically from one day to another, or even from an hour to the following hour. So very, very early days. But I think if you're trying to remove some of the craziness, as I said, around the market, there are a lot of, I think, factors that potentially mean Chelsea certainly have I think, as good a shot as anyone this summer in trying to get him, and particularly, as I think, trying to make the best of a bad situation with the pandemic. We are in a strong position financially, and then maybe you're trying to take advantage a little bit of this very low release clause that he has for the following summer. So if you can overpay this summer, then I think there are a lot of things that are lining up that potentially we can make that move.
Okay, so this now leads on to my next question. Of course, we do know that Erling Haaland's release clause is in the the year 2022, set at 75 million euros. However, it seems like clubs are looking to steal the march in regards to, signing him before that release clause does get exercised, based on the amount of money it could potentially cost, considering this transfer could be way over the amount of money that is set on the release clause. For you, does this make Haaland an even more worthwhile investment?
Yeah, it's a good question to ask from a financial perspective. I think in terms of trying to sign him, you could say probably anywhere from 90 million to maybe 100 million euros is probably accurate in terms of what it will take to sort of trigger an early sale. That may be optimistic. That may even be a little bit too aggressive in terms of the number. But I think in terms of sort of stealing a march on other clubs, then yeah, it is. I think certainly the approach that Chelsea took with Kai Havertz to great success in terms of being able to land him. Same with Timo Werner, and whatever has how those transfers eventually work out in their careers at Chelsea. At the time, the ability to go and make those deals for me is a huge positive, and then that's when I look at Haaland and potentially what he stands for, what he represents as a player, the potential impact that he can have. If you have the ability to go and buy him for, let's say you pay 90 million euros for him, like 80 million quid or whatever that might be at today's rate, I think for his age and potential to lock up a position that, we've massively struggled for centre forwards, even, throughout the entire of the Abramovich era. If you think really 20 goal a season Premier League strikers that we've had, I think it's probably Drogba, Anelka and maybe Diego Costa. All the money we've spent on forwards, we've only really had 3 that have had decent kind of Premier League output. So if you can invest in someone like Haaland and get that profile of player in, I think that massively takes a lot of pressure off the rest of the team. Certainly in terms of chance conversion and things we've seen this season, even going back to Lampard, and not necessarily as much as what we've seen under Tuchel, but those chances I think Haaland takes. And I think again, I'm always of the opinion, Nini, in terms of football and business, if you have the chance to go and get someone who is supremely talented and supremely gifted, and you can take advantage of the market, you can take advantage of just how this whole pandemic situation is panning out for Chelsea, and I think you have to try and make those deals happen. Whether that needs, necessitates that Chelsea need to move on some of the senior players in the squad to free up some money or whatever that may be, or take a little less on deals that maybe they want to. I think if you can create the situation where you can go and buy him, I think it makes perfect sense. He potentially is the long-term future of any attack that he moves to this summer or beyond that. So I think for me, it's completely makes a lot of business sense. I think as well in terms of the quality that he brings to the squad as well, it makes sense from that perspective.
Okay, so taking all of that in, considering we have Tammy Abraham, who is always up there with the top leading scorers for us, considering we could potentially be seeing Havertz as a false 9 when he returns back to the team as well. Is Haaland still needed, considering that we even signed Werner as well?
Yeah, it's a good question, and I think just touching briefly on Tammy before getting into the other players, I think he is absolutely criminally underrated by Chelsea fans, and I think in terms of the way that people analyse him and the level of criticism and critique that is aimed at him, you would think that Chelsea have been blessed with just effectively, falling from Hasselbank into Drogba into Costa, without any of these massive flops that we've had in between. That we have this, this striker lineage, which means that we're always guaranteed to have an elite player there. Tammy, for me, and I think certainly last season, and I think again, if you look at his kind of goals to minutes ratio, without taking penalties, he's close to being a 15 to 20 goal a season striker. And we've spent 70, 80 millions on the Moratas of this world who've got nowhere near those kinds of numbers. Tammy at the moment, I think he costs the club about £2.6 million a year, and his contract is on about 50k a year. So in terms of what his actual cost is to the club versus his output, he's probably the best bang for buck player that Chelsea have at the club. Timo's and your Pulisic's and your Havertz cost the club 18, 19, 20 million quid a year. Tammy costs 10% of that and is actually probably contributing more towards winning games and scoring, etc. than others. So I think he's certainly criminally underrated. Personally, I think some of the I would like to have seen give him more of a run. I think with him, I think his development, and I know this is something we've spoken about privately, from him becoming from an academy player, I think we're only just starting to see now his full game develop. His ability to hold the ball up, to bring people into play, stuff that he never had to do in the Chelsea academy, stuff that he never had to really learn how to do on loan. He's now sort of learning how to become a reference point number 9. So I think from my perspective, I certainly would like to keep him around. I would make the argument that he's probably one of the best number 2 strikers that you could potentially have in the Premier League, and certainly almost like a 1.5 in terms of the goals that he scores. In terms of Timo and Havertz, I think Timo probably, I don't know if it's too soon to say that he can't play as a centre forward in the Premier League. But I think it's clear that at the moment he has more joy playing this kind of split striker role under Tuchel than he did sort of playing down the middle. And I think again people sort of dismiss the fact that a lot of his success in Germany came as playing as part of a 2. So I always forget the guy's name who he played up from. Was it Paulson? I can't remember the guy's name.
Paulson, yeah.
Yeah, Paulson. So he was playing in the 2 with Paulson. And a lot of his success, a lot of his ability to get in behind, to sort of get knockdowns and to get those chances was the fact that he was playing with a reference point, a target man. He's not really, for me, been someone who has had consistent success. And I'm looking more particularly when he's played as a lone centre forward for Germany, somebody who's not necessarily had the same input or impact as a guy who sort of played down the middle. So I think with him, it's a question of where Tuchel eventually sees him having the best fit. If he goes to this sort of 2-striker system and he has more of a reference point up front, a more physical player, whether that is a Haaland or if it's a Tammy or a Giroud with Werner playing off of them, or if it's more of this kind of wide sort of forward role that he's been playing recently, where he's kind of a little bit more in the channels and sort of trying to make some of those runs in behind. But at the moment, I'm not sure if bringing in a centre forward would potentially impact him directly, because I just don't see him as being that sort of number 9 down the middle kind of guy. And as much as I think Kai probably for the rest of the season, maybe the best use of him is to play that sort of that Mason Mount false 9-esque role that I think Mount played, and to give probably Kai the opportunity to sort of play there and maybe pull Mason a little bit deeper. Again, I'm thinking sort of more about the long-term success of Chelsea here and into the future next season. I think if you want to potentially challenge for a title, and again, we're looking to close. At the moment, you're looking at 11 or 14 points, depending on sort of results and things of that nature. But the past 3 seasons, we've been on average like 30 points off the champion. So you're looking at how do you find 10 wins, basically? How do you find 30 points, really, to close the gap from this, the squad that we have, the quality that we have this season to next season? I think in doing so, potentially moving for someone of Haaland's kind of skill set and potential and ability. I don't think I'm necessarily put off by what we have in the squad at the moment. The only one that as I said, I think that probably deserves a little bit more respect would be Tammy. Yeah. But I think as well, the amount of games that you want to really see Chelsea play, like 50 plus every season, there's more than enough opportunities with injuries and suspensions and things of that nature for a really good number 2 to sort of come in. We've seen it a little bit, I suppose, with City this season, with Aguero being out for long periods of time, how you can get those opportunities, how you can still be a prominent member of the squad. So I think for me, Tammy is maybe a 1.5 at the moment. I still honestly think that in 2-3 years' time, he's going to be a very good player, but it's learned facets of the game that we've often spoke about, the hold up, the bringing people into play, the timing of the runs, consistent with finishing, getting better in the air. These aren't like massive knocks on him. He will still score 15, 20 goals a season in the Premier League with what he has now. But in the future, I think he's going to be a very good player. And then again, you have the option of potentially playing both of them up front in that split striker role. I would not like to be a centre-back pair or a back 3 and have to deal with Haaland and Tammy. Certainly with the mobility they both have. And then
that's a real problem right there, to be honest. I feel like both players could coexist together if they were to play too.
100%.
But 100%. At the same time, it will depend on players like Tammy. I mean, he hasn't agreed on his new contract just yet.
Sure. Yep.
I'm sure he's waiting to see what's going to happen up front first before he even commits to his future. But I think to end this video, the final question today, Haaland's, of course, 20 years old, bags of potential. I mean, we saw that brace against Sevilla last night, and he seems destined to be going straight to the top. However, based on his game at this point in time, do you feel like it would be an easy transition for him to the Premier League, where the way we play is a bit different? A lot more teams are comfortable playing not within themselves, but playing without the ball, playing a lot deeper, and of course the intensity is very fast. Players don't give you any time on the ball. Defenders are tall, they're physical, they get away with a few fouls per game. Do you feel like Haaland has it in him at this point in time to be able to fully acclimatise immediately to the Premier League?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think certainly the past couple of seasons I've grown a little bit of a like an alarm system when it comes to Bundesliga products coming to the Premier League. You know, I'm not somebody who necessarily always believes that, you know, because someone hasn't done something, nobody else can, but there is a little bit of a trend that they do take time to settle, and in some cases don't settle at all. Think of all the Dortmund guys, your Kagawas, your Mkhitaryan's, etc., that moved to Arsenal and to United. Even players that have left Dortmund in Germany, Goetze and others who have not necessarily done well. The way that the league is over there is quite a lot different to the Premier League. There's a lot more space. Literally every team presses. Every team is playing a high line. There's lots of space. There's lots of movement. And I think probably, you know, to temper some of the expectations of him, I think there would be an adaptation period. The one thing I would say is that I did probably maybe a week or so ago actually just take a look at his games for Norway, just to kind of see how does he actually look when he's not playing in like a very Dortmund-esque team. You know, they have a very, very specific style of play. I think sometimes a lot of their players become system players. They're great in that shape, great playing in that league, in that system. When you take them away from it and ask them to do different things, they kind of collapse in on themselves. And I think the one comfort that I've taken is that, yes, it's Norway, and okay, you know, the European games, although that I've seen, they're not playing against the world's best. But his style of play in those games, I think, to me, has given me confidence. I think he'd come to the Premier League and do very well. He's probably a lot more involved in the build-up. He's actually, for me, a lot more mobile. He's not as, I'm not saying he's a static player, but he's a guy who, in Dortmund, he's like the finisher. He's there to sort of finish the chances. From Norway, he's dropping deep. He's linking play. You know, he's actually assisting. He's kind of being more of, I would say, a well-rounded or an all-round centre forward. So if you take that kind of view that he can play that way, combine it with, obviously, he's a fantastic finisher, amazing prowess for goal scoring, and then all the physical tools that he has, we know that he's freakishly fast. Nobody that big should be that quick.
Yeah.
You know, he is, as I said, the Norwegian cyborg. I think he has all the physical tools to be a Premier League success. It's just a question of whether some of the intricacies, the way that he finds space, the way that he can factor shots and things like that, whether that translates from the Bundesliga to the Premier League. I kind of think it will, because I think I've seen it enough, at least in the couple of games that I've seen from Norway, his ability to correct himself, his ability to get shots off. You know, it's a much different system to what Dortmund plays. So I think maybe he's not dependent on the system as much. But when he comes to Chelsea, obviously you're going to have a huge adaptation, particularly when you start playing teams who are pretty much, you know, 10 men behind the ball, break us down, and you know, it's not a question of always running in and finishing things. Sometimes it's a question of making things for yourself as well. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, I think that is. I mean, I think this whole story is just like so fascinating, to be honest. I think, you know, if I'm Haaland, I'm looking at Tammy Abraham, and Tammy, you could say, was one of those strikers, you know, throughout his, you know, young career. He has been more of a not fox in the box style striker, plays on the shoulder, plays on the last line, hasn't been as involved in the build-up. However, over the past 18 months, we're seeing him really, you know, take to the role, really improve and show that he has the potential to be, you know, a great striker in the future with a great all-round game. So I feel like with Haaland already, as you're saying, Norway, he's playing a role that, you know, benefits the team more. He's more involved in the build-up. He isn't just playing the, you know, the icing on the cake style role where he just has to get in the final third and just put these chances away. You know, that gives me the confidence. That makes me feel. It makes me feel confident that Haaland can be a success here. And considering that next season, when you have a Kai Havertz that's fully acclimatized to the Premier League, we're going to be seeing bigger things from him. Hopefully, Hakim Ziyech as well, once he gets, you know, over some of his injury issues and is able to play with that confidence that we know he can bring. I mean, we've got players in the team, especially Hudson-Odoi playing further up too. We've got players that will be able to find him. And I think some of the issues, some of the bottlenecks we see this season where, you know, at times our strikers aren't being found their runs, shouldn't be something that affects the team for next season. So it seems like Erling Haaland, number one target. I mean, Joe, before we end things, how much do you think realistically this deal could cost?
Oof. So I think that you could argue that Chelsea would pay anywhere from maybe 10 to 20% above the buyout for the following season to get a deal done early. So I think you said if it's around 80, you said it's around about 80 million euros. I think anywhere up to 100 million euros is possibly what it would take here. Although saying that, I mean, again, you look at the discount on the Jadon Sancho potential deal this summer that Dortmund have kind of laid on. It could be that you just offer to pay, you know, 90 million euros, a little bit above the buyout. You pay all the fees and associated with the move, etc. And it gets it done. But it's going to be interesting because I think, again, you know, in normal circumstances, without a buyout clause, you could argue that he is, you know, probably going to go for near maybe not quite Mbappe money or Neymar money, but he's going to be in that should be in that kind of stratosphere. But you could probably get him for 80, 90 million pounds, which I think, again, given his potential, given his age, given I think what a lot of people think of him, that although it's a lot of money, that does seem pretty almost like a bit of a bargain in today's sort of transfer market. So yeah, around that fee, I'd be more than happy to pay it for him. And I do think that he potentially, as we sort of outlined, I think he could be a real game changer if we do sign him next season, because he just has everything that you want. He's got the pace, he's got the power, the finishing ability. He's fantastic in the air. He's great off the ball. He defends really well. He's kind of the perfect guy, which kind of makes you think, well, what's wrong with him? Where's the red flag? Because nobody's perfect. But from what I've seen so far, I think he would be a fantastic fit here, and somebody that I think Chelsea fans would both get behind, and I think he'd add an awful lot to the team as well.
Yeah, I mean, I can just picture him in that beautiful blue kit for next season, man, honestly. And I'm hoping that Dortmund season does, falter. I'm hoping that second leg Sevilla are coming back and, qualifying too. I mean, with Dortmund, we know that they have some financial issues already due to COVID, missing out on match revenue, so many things like that. And if they don't get UCL football, then who knows what's going to happen. And of course, you guys in the comment section below, you have to give your thoughts and opinions behind what is looking like it's going to be like a ridiculous summer periods. Erling Haaland, is he the guy for you? State your reasons why. And on that note, I'm going to wrap things up, keep things moving. Thank you for watching. I'm Nini FC. This is Blue Lions TV. I'll catch you guys later with some more videos.